I'm Lyndon, Holland.
And I'm Jonathan Burroughs, and we helped create Virginia. Virginia is a mystery story, a detective story, set in the titular state in the 1990s, and it's about an FBI investigation into a missing boy, Lucas Fairfax. The game is almost entirely played from the perspective of Antava, a character we see here. Antava is a graduate FBI agent. This is really her first case, and she's immediately assigned a partner, Maria Halperin, who's a more seasoned FBI agent. The two of them are sent out to rural Virginia to the small town of Kingdom. Variable State, the loose studio that made the game, we started out in 2014, myself and Terry Kenny, the co-founder of the company, wanting to make an indie game, wanting to make a game that put story at the forefront. And then, really over a period of weeks and months, that started to crystallize into a story that we based on television and drama that really resonated with us in our childhood. So kind of FBI noir shows like The X-Files and like Twin Peaks. A story that was based around an investigation was useful. It gave a certain framework for building the drama. And then as time went on, we, I think, just leaned more heavily into something that was nostalgic to those shows and would be about a relationship between the two main characters. A very green FBI agent who would offer the player a window into this world, and then a more seasoned veteran agent. There could be both the promise of friendship between these characters, but also dynamics at work that would tear them apart and would frustrate that friendship. When the game began, it was just myself and Terry. Terry's background is animation, my background is game design and level design. I don't really have any skills in terms of programming. We only had a certain amount of money to run with at the start of the project, and we wanted that to last as long as possible, so we were desperately keen to keep the team small. And one of the decisions we reached early on was there'll be no spoken dialogue in the game. We'll eliminate the anxieties of having to write a script, of having to find actors, of having to get the recording to quality, and instead we'll create a sort of a showpiece for Terry's animation, have the characters, convey something of themselves through their physical performance, through their animation, but then we felt there's going to have to be another aspect to that. What we need is the soundscape to convey the emotional intent of scenes, and that's when we started looking for a composer, and we were very fortunate to very early on find Lyndon. As time went on, it was just apparent Lyndon, myself and Terry have a sort of shorthand in how we work. We were all very much of one mind when it comes to arriving at decisions about things. So it was a great collaboration.
I started writing the music before we'd really got any game at all, from pretty early on when we were starting writing the story. And I would just look at the themes and the story beats that I could see that were coming up and start building a musical vocabulary which I could use throughout the score. And probably about 80% of the music was unchanged when it actually went into the game. I guess the influences musically were similar to the influences just generally. So I was really into early 90s thriller soundtracks. I liked a sort of old-sounding synth sound, which I suppose is in vogue at the moment with the retro wave stuff. I liked mixing that with orchestral music, because that's what they used to do in the early 90s. So it was sort of, that colour palette is something that I was drawing from. There was a lot of music in the game, and the music was not just wallpaper, it wasn't just sort of creating atmosphere. It was actually, a lot of times, it was telling the story. And so if the music wasn't right, it had the risk of disrupting how people understood what was going on. There's an example of that in this room where the player goes to open the wardrobe, and suddenly the music changes to this tremolo string. So there's a bit of tension when Anne realises that there is something in this wardrobe of interest. And when the secret passage is revealed, there's a new piece of music comes in, and we now reveal that there is a hidden photo room. And so the music is always with the character, reacting to what's going on. That is something which film music often does, but in games it's more difficult because you don't know when the player is going to interact with something. So music has to be designed in such a way that at any possible moment it has to change.
It's part of the quality of the game, gives it that film-like quality. The music very much reacting to the moment-to-moment ebb and flow of the story, and to the cutting as well. It was very important we could have these abrupt scene transitions which would happen on a frame without any sense of a load or any kind of pause from one scene to the next. That was essential for the general feel of the game, but then that synchronized with the music as well. Although our game is notionally set in the real world, it's very much a stylized depiction of Virginia, stylized beyond just the illustrative style of the game. It's an idealized, in some ways, interpretation of the state. So you get the picture postcard foliage, the brightly coloured reds and yellows and greens of the trees and so on. We're kind of unapologetic about this. There is a lack of authenticity there, but it's meant to be the Virginia from a television show as seen one step removed from reality. To some extent, the story was constructed out of a desire to feature certain, what we perceive to be iconic locations. I don't know how we arrived at it, but there was always the desire that some scene would feature kids using an observatory, an old abandoned observatory, as a den of some sort. There was always going to be a gas station at night.
Those things existed before they had any narrative purpose behind. And we built the town of Kingdom around that.
Yeah.
We go to all the nicest locations of the town.
Definitely an amount of figuring out the geography of it all after the fact. Once we had this sort of buffet of locations that we wanted to include, then figuring out how they would relate to one another. But it was a useful constraint to have these images, these locations that hopefully we could include in the story.
For me, this moment right now is probably the most successful piece of music in the game. It happens at a moment which is ostensibly the climax of the game, and you feel like maybe this is the end. It kind of came at a moment where this scene wasn't working at all, and when we got the music in and we started to connect the scenes together, edited to the music, all the things came together all at once.
Although we knew in broad strokes we wanted the sequence, this kind of montage-like sequence to occur at this point in the story, the final structure of it was very much informed by the music. Lyndon had written this piece of music that we were very attached to and we didn't want changing, and so the game changed to accommodate the music to a great extent. And then the marriage of those two I think was very successful. I'm very pleased how this turned out as well. BAFTA is the highest accolade in games, like in terms of the institution and previous winners.
I just sort of screamed at the top of my voice when we got nominated.
There have been some really excellent games, and so to then find that we have been nominated in multiple categories was wonderful. Very pleased in particular that Lyndon had been recognised, that he was up for a nomination. His work is of such quality and is so pivotal to the project, and he had been such a pleasure to work with. His efforts are so much greater than just the music. He had done level design, he'd been there from day one.
The winner is Virginia!
When they called my name, I just couldn't believe it. It wasn't really until after all the interviews and 10 minutes, like after going off the stage, it really sunk in, like what had happened. Wow, thank you very much. Going to be quite cheesy and thank my mum and dad who in the audience tonight, actually. Jonathan Burroughs and Terry Kenny, who the creative directors of Virginia, made a incredible work environment to be creative in, and thank you very much for employing me. Thank you. Kind of an out-of-body experience, really, to get there and be in front of all these industry people, and it's like, this is my first game.